Yeah, I went to a couple of different schools with like interesting educational modalities. So I was originally in a great books program, and what that is a program where everyone reads the same canon for 4 years. So all the students read, day one, class one is Homer, the Iliad, and then day two, class two is Euclid, day three, class three is Plato. And you kind of march over the course of 4 years through Western civilization and get up through, early 20th century by the end of 4 years. Um, and what that pedagogical model does is it puts the text at the center of the room as like the teacher. And so you really spend a lot of time trying to internalize what that author was saying. Now, I don't think that's always the best model, but it has this following virtue, which is that a lot of times we teach some of these classic texts in the context of what we know today. And it undermines the real value of reading those texts. And the value of reading those texts is seeing how people with really impoverished technologies and impoverished, scientific capacity, entire impoverished views of like gender and race, were able to make these remarkable insights about the social world and about the human condition, and write books that kind of advance the sort of the space of human knowledge about the world. And unless you understand sort of the world they're in or take them on their own terms, it's hard to see just how important those moves were and to learn what it is to kind of pull yourself outside the limitations of your time and your place and try to make a real advance that has, historical impact. And so I found that model of letting the text be the teacher really provocative and interesting one. And it also prevented whatever, teacher, was in the room, the professor, from dominating your interpretation or your relationship with the author. I find that to be a really useful way of approaching text a lot of the time. And then I moved from the Great Books program to a program that was really a tutorial model. And so that was a program where really it was, one-on-one with a professor, very small school in Vermont. And what you would do is you would, work through a text, but you would have this kind of daily interaction with a single faculty member one-on-one. This is the same model they use it in the tutorial sessions in Oxford. And you develop this kind of intimate knowledge of the text because of this like deep conversation you get to have line by line, really, between the text and yourself and your professor. And I think that that's also a really valuable way of reading texts, of like trying to understand line by line what authors are writing, but also trying to internalize the wisdom that comes from someone who's been working on this for, decades. And then finally, when I went to grad school, I moved to a program in philosophy where I had probably one of the best classes I've ever had. And it was a standard lecture class. And I was surprised that it was so good. I learned so much. And it was a class on a very sort of difficult and abstract topic, which is computation theory, the learning really the foundational proofs for logic, like, Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which is, famous from a lot of books written about it. And um, Turing's proof about universal computation, which is what's known as the Turing machine. And working through those proofs, you can do it on your own if you can understand logic, but having a professor there who can walk you through the subtle moves and which of those moves were kind of well known at the time and which of them were just strokes of genius, and helping frame kind of the steps of logic that the thinker took and why they took them and where it seemed to be a mistake, but it wasn't. And all of these things, all these kind of different pedagogical models, to me, are ways of seeing how we think and understanding and interpreting your own process when you're digesting new information and trying to train yourself to think more effectively and to sort of move beyond what you can think of as the box, right? And so I would say, in addition to all of that, I also had a mentorship experience in the final stages of my career as I was finishing my PhD. Um, by someone who didn't work with me on research at all, wasn't, directly involved in my dissertation, but acted as a faculty mentor, just kind of giving me advice about how to manage my career and the sort of stages of work that I was doing, how to develop a paper and a book, and how to sort of manage all the different expectations that come on you as a sort of professional working in intellectual domain. And I found that sort of mentorship experience more rewarding in many ways than many of like the straight class experiences I've had. Because what that person was helping me to do, and this is Peter Bearman, he's a professor at Columbia, um, was helping me to sort of think about my role in the discipline and how I would navigate my work life and my professional sort of persona, but also my private life and my desire to have a family and children. And these things tend to get lost a lot in education, particularly at the higher tiers, where people focus almost always on like success in publishing and job accomplishments. And he was very instructive in giving me a perspective on my career that was really balanced in terms of what my goals were personally and how to integrate them into my expectations professionally.